call the meeting to order. This is the East Lyme Board of Selectmen regular meeting of June 17th, 2020 via Zoom. It is being recorded. I had one constituent call this week, said that whatever phone system she has, whatever phone plan she has, was charging her toll calls. She was calling into the Chicago number, the New York City number. And she received a $600 phone bill because she was listening in to all the calls. Keep that in mind, depending on your, it doesn't, we only have one call in, and I think it's connected to Bill, so we don't have that issue tonight, but I did want to, for the record, mention that, and I'll continue to mention that depending on your phone plan, you might have a phone bill associated with this if you don't call the proper number, do your homework. Additional agenda and consent items, I don't believe there are any, so we'll go right to the delegations. Would anyone like to speak to the Board of Selectmen? Yes, Lisa. I'm making that funny noise. Lisa, we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but there's a real squeakiness that's coming out of you. And you're not muted here.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but she sounds like
chipmunks.
She sounds like Minnie Mouse. I mean, it almost comes across that type of sound right now.
Lisa, we found when you turn off your go to mute and then back to unmute, you'll restore. You try
so
that.
Maybe mute yourself, Lisa, and then come back on. Try that. No, Lisa. You know, I'll give you a minute if you want to call into the other number. Sounds like you're going to do that. What is the phone number? All right, you ready? You're going to have to write this down. And this is a toll call, but if you're on your cell phone, it doesn't matter. 1-646-558-8656. The meeting ID number is 839-0685-9095. And you probably have to pound after that. I'll give you a minute. Would anyone else like to speak to the Board of Selectmen this evening as public delegation? Looks like Roseanne made it on the call. And Sandy, I just muted you. You have a lot of background noise. I'll tell you what, while we're waiting for Lisa to come on, why don't we do the approval of the minutes, if it's okay with the rest of the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, yeah.
Just on agenda while we're waiting for Lisa to come on.
Okay, this is Kevin Siri, and I'll move to approve the public hearing meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2020 as submitted.
Second.
Second by
Mark Salerno.
Motion and second. Are there any comments or corrections? All in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And are there any abstaining? Okay. Anyone that abstains? No. So we'll go to, that was your public hearing, right?
This is Kevin Siri. I'll move to approve the regular meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2020 as submitted.
Second.
Motion and second had been made. That was Roseanne, obviously, making the second. Kevin Siri made the motion. Are there any comments or corrections? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Lisa, maybe you dialed in. 204-2428, is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. Lisa,
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Lisa Picarazzi, 14 Hill Drive, Niantic, Connecticut. I speak as a member of the former PSB subcommittee. So I just want to make a comment about a couple of items that you're not going to see in the overall estimate tonight. I think it's significant enough that I took the time to come to this meeting, and I want to bring them to your attention. And one is the price of the roof, which is beyond its useful life. That was presented to us by Silver and Petruccelli at the first meeting of October 7th. Cost of the roof replacement is $372,000 and $372,636. And the other are the two rooftop mechanical units, of which one was included by the subcommittee. Each of them are valued at $95,000. They were rated by Silver and Petruccelli also to be the end of their useful life. We may get a couple of years out of them, we may not. I feel it's inappropriate that they were not included in the estimate, as our charge to the taxpayer was to refurbish the building. This is a significant cost for a total of $467,000 and I can't say that right, $467,636. We will not see this in the estimate, but shortly, in a year or two or three, somebody will come back to you with a request to replace them, which should be in this budget. And at that time, it will be more money than the figure I just gave you. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else? Terrific. The consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar for the meeting of June 17th, 2020, in the amount of $2,488.08. And this is Kevin Siri moving it.
Second.
I'll second it. It's Dan.
Dan, you seconded it?
Yes.
Okay, I also heard Mark, but we'll give Dan the credit on this one, and Kevin made the motion. Any further comment? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstain? Okay. We are at the part of the agenda now where there is a presentation by the Public Safety Vision Committee, which have been meeting now for well, over a year, and actually had concluded months ago, but we are, everything's being delayed. There is a presentation to be put on. Yeah, let's see if we can figure this out. I'm hoping you can all see this. How did I do?
You did well, and we can see it.
Great.
Good.
So here we are, and I think we're ready to go. We'll save all questions to the end. So who's going to start us off tonight? Is this Paul? Paul, are you muted? Oh boy.
Yeah, Paul, you're muted.
Yeah, I get you. I'm muted now, buddy.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry
So,
about that.
as I stated, this is Paul Daigle, Chair of the Public Safety Building Vision Committee. Tonight, it's my pleasure to make this presentation to the Board of Selectmen, along with Silver Petruccelli and Associates and Anna Johnson, the Director of Finance for the town of East Lyme. Yeah, go to the second slide. Next slide, please.
Yeah, how do you do that? How's that?
Here we go. The Vision Committee was appointed last March, March of 2013 by the Board of Selectmen. The membership is listed below. I want to point out it's a bipartisan membership, representative of the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, the Police Commission, Mr. Finkelstein, the Chief of Police, as well as key citizens, Joe Barry and Bill Cornelius. Both Lisa Piccarazzi and Bill Weber, when initially appointed, were members of the Board of Finance. They did not run for re-election. That's why I have the citizens next to their name. There is a person I would like to recognize, and that's Ms. Julie Wilson. She was our recording secretary, and I can tell you, of all the committee members, she did a bull's work amount of work supporting our meetings, getting meeting minutes issued. It's just fantastic job, and we wouldn't have been able to make the progress without her assistance. And secondly, I'd like to recognize Chief Finkelstein's effort. As the future occupant of this building, not only was he responsible to review the needs assessments and the functionality of the building, but he also led the charge on the communications, which was quite extensive, relocating communications from several buildings in town to this building. He worked with our IT contractors, the state of Connecticut, and the town owes a great debt of gratitude, to Mike for the heavy lifting that he did throughout this project, all while maintaining his day job as chief of police in East Lyme. Thank you. If we can now move on to the next slide, just want to review the framework by which the Vision Committee executed its tasks. Okay. So there was a need for a fully functional facility for our police, dispatch, emergency management, and fire marshal departments. That's what we were off to accomplish. Consideration and appropriation in 2019 for this need by the boards of selectmen and finance, and eventually a referendum by the citizens of East Lyme, resulted in the Board of Finance approving $6 million to execute the renovation project, which was including the holding cells and Sallyport. The Board of Finance reduced the appropriation to $5 million. I believe it was due to a lack of a detailed estimate at that time, and the possibility of continuing the holding cell lease with the town of Waterford. And a $5 million appropriation was approved at referendum by the voters of East Lyme. We were off to renovate only as necessary, not to totally renovate the building to a new classification. But this was to be done without sacrificing functionality. We did not constrain ourselves to the $5 million that was approved by the Board of Finance and the voters of East Lyme, because we did not want to sacrifice functionality of this building going forward. We can move on to the next slide, please. So one of the first things the Vision Committee did was to prepare a request for a proposal and evaluate 9 proposals and select an architectural firm. We did receive 9 proposals. Various committee members reviewed those, with the entire Vision Committee reviewed those proposals, but additionally, various committee members went out to local police stations that were either renovated or built new to collect lessons learned that they brought to the table as we started the design process. The next responsibility and objective was to determine a scope of work for the renovation project. We partnered with Silver Petroselli and Associates through 5 phases of the work. The first was a needs assessment that was done with town department heads, Chief Finkelstein and the fire marshal's office. There was a conceptual design developed by Silver Petroselli and Associates. That, once approved by the Vision Committee, went on to a schematic design, and then to construction documents that were used to bid the project out to contractors. And I want to state here that the construction documents have been approved by the East Lyme building inspector and the fire marshal as meeting code requirements. The next step was to contract bidder and evaluation of those bids. If we can move on to the next slide. Okay, the next step was to select a contractor for the renovation. You'll see later in the presentation, we received 9 bids for this project, and Silver Petroselli will review those bids in their portion of the presentation. So we were off to develop an accurate total project cost estimate compiled with the contractor's bid. That included the purchase price of the building, the architectural fees to get the design completed, contingency money, and you'll see some of the things as we go through the price. Included things like hooking up water, putting an elevator in the building, and so on. But I won't go through all those details. I'll leave that to the Silver Petroselli. And then finally, to recommend the best design and its cost to the town. And that's why we're here tonight. Just wanted to go over the members of the committee, the process and the steps we took to get us to this point, to come up with what we think is the best value. And I will state that the entire Vision Committee unanimously approved this project at the $7.18 million that most of you may have already heard, because it was documented in our meeting minutes and also published in the day. So with that, I would now like to introduce from Silver Petroselli and Associates, William Silver, the principal, one of the principal owners of the company, and Brian Cleveland, the lead architect for the project. They are going to walk you through some assessments of the building that were performed, the actual layout of the building, costs associated with that, and then we'll move on to Anna Johnson. So Bill, I believe you're going to lead off. So thank you very much, and please go right ahead.
And let's hope my signal comes through and doesn't get warped by the internet. I'm Bill Silver, and Brian and I have been working with this committee for quite a while now. Silver Petroselli, just by introduction, before Brian takes over the technical side, is a 45-person architecture and engineering and interior design firm based in Hamden, but also with offices in New London. We've had about 10 staff members involved in this project: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection engineers, as well as structural engineers from New London, and civil engineers, Benesh Engineering from Glastonbury. And so a fairly large team has been involved in this project, and especially from the needs assessment side, bringing all those technical eyes onto the conditions of the existing building and their suitability for reuse or repurposing in the new departments that are being proposed. And so Mark, go ahead to the next slide, and I'll flip it over to Brian.
Now, Brian might be, maybe, is he muted? So Brian, are you on a phone?
He's on both, and he said he was having internet issues. That's why he's prepared for both.
So I'm going to unmute this 203-988-2878. Is it yours, Bill, or is that?
That's me. That's me.
Is that's Bill or Brian?
Me. Yeah.
Bill.
So the second one is Brian.
I don't see Brian on here. 203, maybe. Yeah, 988-2878. He's having problems reaching.
Okay. Well, I can take it while he tries to work out his problems.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry about that. Let me see if there's any other way I can. Let me just go through person by person here. I'm sorry. iPad 3. I don't think that's.
I believe his cell phone number, Mark, is 230-8247.
Yeah, I don't even have that listed, do I?
No, that's our fax number.
Oh, sorry.
I have Bill. I don't even see Brian on here anymore. Does anyone see his face? He might be trying to bust back in. Well, we'll look for him, and if you want to take the lead here, Bill.
Sure. Next slide, please, Mark.
Okay.
Obviously, the first phase, as Paul mentioned, was the preliminary assessment, where we evaluated all of those site aspects, and certainly looking at pavement conditions and site lighting, the security for the site, especially as it relates to a police department, its orientation to the main road. Also, we can really took a deep look into accessibility issues, life safety, and all those engineering systems. And certainly mechanical, plumbing, and electrical are those systems that do have useful lives, that they do wear out. And we wanted to get a sense of how they had been used in their past corporate life and how well or not that they would serve the town in the future. And so we went through all of those aspects during the initial phase of the project. And go ahead to the next slide, Mark. And Brian, if you come in, chime in at any time, don't hesitate to interrupt. As I said, we really did evaluate the site circulation and how the parking would serve, as well as the necessary police functions like impound lots, fenced security in the rear of the property, because certainly we'd rather the public approach from the front of the property or the east side of the property. And all aspects of it, including parking capacity, worked very well in favor for not just the police use of this building, for any use that would be piggybacked with the police function. So giving the town a lot of flexibility in terms of how the site could be used either for town functions or for rental functions. Go ahead, Mark, next one. Certainly the existing building characteristics, as I mentioned before, were very deeply looked at. Structural systems were a concern because of its elevated use and importance as an emergency service facility. Accessibility is always in the forefront of all of our discussions in reality because of the need to conform with the ADA. And so we looked at those 2 stories that don't currently have an interconnection internally. And the committee was very interested in developing that vertical lift or that elevator system so that it would serve the building for the next 40, 50 years of its life. And so its accessibility is reasonably good in terms of level floors, not a lot of floor changes, certainly not a lot of split levels and elements like that that would compound accessibility. In the bathrooms, of course, will be upgraded from the 80s when it was built with some modicum of accessibility and now adding the current code requirements. Go ahead, Mark.
I did notice that another phone number came in. Brian, are you there?
I am back. I don't know what happened, but everything dropped off as soon as I started speaking.
Amazing. Amazing. Maybe it was stage fright, Brian. Bill's doing a good job. I know you can't see the slides. Am I right?
Yes, but I do have them, so I can follow along as we go.
So we're at slide 11 right now. Eastside Public Safety Building Project Development. Do you want to take over?
Sure. Did we just jump into the slide?
We just went into, just starting slide 11.
Okay, great. So yeah, based on our investigation of the building, we did do a needs assessment for all of the components throughout the building and the site.
Brian,
which we then.
Brian, you're fading out. If you could speak right into that phone.
Here, this might be better.
Yeah.
So based on our investigation of the building, we developed a needs assessment report that ranked all of the potential items that needed to be addressed within the building, ranking them 1 to 4, and associating a cost estimate to each one of those items. This allowed the building committee to review all of the different components throughout the building and determine what scope of work needed to be included within the overall project scope, and to see how we then proceed to develop a budget for the project and to hone in on things that may end up inevitably being deferred to some other capital costs that need to be addressed down the road, such as the rooftop unit replacement or the roof replacement, as Lisa had mentioned. From there, we also were meeting with the fire marshal and police departments to develop a program of the square footages that each one of their own departments needed. We use that information to then find out if any of the existing rooms that are currently within the building would suit their needs, and how we then work them into the overall plan. From that, we developed several conceptual designs that we had some back and forth dialogues with the police department and fire marshal about, and inevitably landed on a one-story concept that we then presented to the vision committee for their review. With that proposal, we did develop cost estimates for both a one-story and a two-story option, and those two were given to the vision committee for their review, and to make sure that we were trying to stay within the project estimated value. Some of the things that we had to figure out as to whether or not they would be within the project scope based on those estimated costs was the detention cell and sally port, the elevator hoistway and the cab for it, the extension of the domestic water to the building, whether or not we wanted to put sprinklers or fire-rated walls. It was a either or option there. And then also what we would do with mechanical equipment replacements. So with each one of these, obviously there's a cost associated with it. And as we honed in on which ones we wanted to keep in the scope of work, that affected the overall project cost, and therefore established what our overall construction documents were going to look like when we went out to bid. You could flip to the next slide. So from here, we did get approval on the site plan, which you can see. It did take into consideration providing an accessible entrance into the fire marshal's office, which is on the right-hand side of the front of the building, providing handicapped accessible parking spaces within the front of the building that would then provide accessible access into the ground floor lobby of that space, and then also to the proposed location for the elevator just off of the lobby. We also laid out the parking area for the patrol cars around the rear of the building, an impound lot, which would be fenced in for the police use. And then as you continue around to the back of the property, it actually goes uphill one full story. So that's where we provided the second accessible entrance into the building, where you can see the two handicap parking spaces up in the top right-hand corner of the plan there. That's why we had determined that while it's not necessary for us to provide the elevator because we do have this on-grade access off the back, it's certainly not preferred because the majority of the public access to the building is going to be off the middle front of the building into the lobby and circulate up to the second floor from there. So we wanted to give them the accessibility to come up through the lobby as opposed to having to go through the parking area for the police department. Okay, you can flip to the next slide. The next slide shows where we landed relative to the overall layout of the building. You can see highlighted in blue throughout the majority of the first floor of the plan, that is the police office function. In yellow, we have some of the common area, which includes stairs, mechanical spaces, as well as the lobby and the elevator that would then let you up to the second floor, and a public restroom off of that main lobby. The green at the front of the building is the new dispatch location. The red is the new fire marshal's office, and in the back in the purple color is the emergency operations center. Off to the left is the dark blue area that is the Sally Port area with the 3 new detention cells, so that we can take that functionality out of the Waterford Police Department and bring it back into East Lyme. That also includes actually the evidence storage area, which is currently being kept off-site. The second floor, you can see that we have left the majority of that space unoccupied, except for a small area where the server room is going to be located. We felt that it needed to be in a central location within the building with easy access to the emergency operations room towards the rear of the building, directly below it, as well as the dispatch area. And it will be the node for a lot of the different equipment throughout the city, including the closed circuit televisions and water monitoring, as well as channel 22. We could flip to the next slide. This shows the results of the construction documents and specifications that Silver Petrocelli prepared for the project, outlining the, I believe it was said that there were 9 bids that we received. The lowest bid being from Noble Construction at $3.081 million. Very close to them was another bidder at $3.13 million, 3.38, 3.37. All of the bids except for one, which was quite an outlier, were all very tight. So it did give us a level of comfort as to the detail that was able to be provided within our construction documents, as well as the competitiveness of all of the bidders that submitted on this project. Included within these estimates were 2 alternates. One add alternate was to, in the base bid, I'm going to rewind a little bit. In the base bid, we did include putting in the elevator hoistway, as was shown in the building plans off of the lobby space. But that only is the shaft for which the elevator is to go into. As a add alternate to the project, we asked the bidders to give us a cost for putting the elevator cab and doing the finishing work that's necessary for the elevator into that hoistway that's part of the base bid. Noble Construction was not the lowest, but theirs was kind of right in the middle of the road to put in that elevator cab at $198,000. We also asked all the bidders to provide a deduct alternate to remove some scope of work from the project, which was focused on the detention in the Sallyport area, that purple blue highlighted area in the previous plan. If we were to remove that scope of work from the overall project, Noble gave us a deduct of $734,000 from their bid. Move on to the next slide. From here, we took that bid amount from Noble Construction at $3.081 million and included that in all of the allowances and soft costs that we assumed would be needed for this project. So some of the architecture speak that we have here, soft costs and hard costs. Hard cost is any cost that is associated with constructing the building itself. That includes doing any of the excavation, the roof work, mechanical equipment, the contractors, materials, and labor force. The soft cost is related to any back of house things that need to be provided by the city in this matter, which include materials testing, which is on the behalf of the owner of the building, connection to public water, the clerk of the works, the architect and engineering fees. The actual procurement of the building is a soft cost because it's not actually part of the cost of doing the construction work to the project. So we congregated all of those soft costs and hard costs into the top portion of this spreadsheet, and those all with just the base bid value came out to $6.977 million, so just a hair under $7 million. Again, we have not in our work thus far chosen to take the deduct alternate, which is in the next set of cells for that $734,000. So we have not removed that value from the base bid grand total that we have above, because it already includes the work needed to put in the detention cell in the Sallyport. What we did, though, add to the just under $7 million value is include the cost for putting in the elevator. It was voted on by the Vision Committee that this would be the appropriate time to put in the elevator and the cab so that we would have accessible access to all floors of the building off of the lobby space. So adding that to the base bid grand total, that brought the project total cost, which again, we have allowances in there. So this is roughly what we believe the project will cost in the very end. That total project cost is $7.17 million. Can flip to the next slide.
The next slide is, I think, the slide you want me to slide in, or is that after this?
That's after this.
Okay, so there's 16, and then I'll have to go find the other slide.
Yep. So as part of our analysis to see if the overall project cost was of a good value for the city and for the police department, we were asked to do a rough order of magnitude estimate on what it might cost to build a comparable building of the same square footage, of the same uses on a virgin piece of property within the town. So again, we broke down the estimate that you see on this slide into two pieces. The project hard cost, which again is the actual construction of the site, the building, and any of the infrastructure that would be coming to it. And then the soft cost, which includes the land acquisition, the furniture, the communications equipment we kept in that soft cost, the architect and engineering services, and then any other owner-related fees, such as contingencies or other unknown costs that are associated with needing to build the building, building permit fees, things of that nature. So to look at the project hard cost, we have a building. The Honeywell building is 31,685 square feet. And based on an average cost in 2020 for developing a site for a building of this size, it costs roughly $26 a square foot of building area to develop the site. So that's a little over under $1 million in order to develop the site. We attributed $336 a square foot to the police department dispatch and EOC functions, which accounts for 15,700 square feet of the overall building square footage. That cost comes to roughly $5.25 million just to put together the police department building itself. The fire marshal offices, which are a little less intense, they don't have the same level of technology, the holding cells, video surveillance, etc. That per square foot cost is more around $220 a square foot for the 2,130 square feet we have for that use. And then the last piece of this is that there's roughly 13,000, almost 14,000 square feet of unfinished space in the Honeywell building that is left for future uses. So since it's undeveloped part of the building, we attributed about $171 a square foot for that nearly 14,000 square feet just to build out a shell of a building that could then be used for a future use. Getting into the soft costs, we assumed based on an average $70,000 per acre within the town of East Lyme, that you would need about 8 acres in order to build a building of this size, the parking associated with it, all the other pieces that go with that. So that was a little over $500,000 just for the land acquisition. The furnishings would cost another $160,000, and this takes into the same consideration that we would be reusing a lot of the furniture that the police department already has in its possession. So this is, again, apples to apples to try to compare what you're getting out of the Honeywell building and what it might cost for a brand new building. The communications equipment, again, this is an extra cost that needs to be accounted for. It's not part of any of the $7.18 million that we are asking for today. We left an allowance of $500,000 for that amount, as well as the 6% and 15% for A&E services and owners related fees for those hard costs. So if we were to build the same building as you're getting out of the Honeywell building, we feel that the total project cost for building a comparable building on an undeveloped piece of property somewhere in the town would be roughly $12 million. And with that, I will turn it back over to Bill to hopefully talk about some of the other police departments that we've seen being developed in the area.
I think I just did it.
All right, Mark. Well done. So we also wanted to take a realistic look of how East Lyme compares with others. And these aren't police stations that were designed and built 5 or 10 years ago. And excuse the police department, those go screaming by my
The
home.
timing.
Yeah, really. And these represent current police department projects in other parts of the state. So they are Connecticut centric. The left-hand column is the existing square footages of those police departments. And you can see, for instance, that Newtown is in a fairly spacious quarters right now, and they're moving to slightly larger quarters, which are not wood framed. They are a corporate office building of steel and masonry construction. The renovated square foot column is the spaces that they are moving into and renovating or improving as part of their projects. And you can see for the East Lyme portion, we broke it down into 15,700 for the police department, 2,100 for the fire marshal, and 13,000, which is available for other town uses or for lease. In other words, very good flexibility in terms of their use. And obviously the Vision Committee has been very diligent in keeping the floor plates separate so that that partitioning, different uses, different times of uses can be affected. And that even is, to a degree is incorporated into some of the mechanical designs. The scope in the middle is fairly straightforward, where very similar to yours, Newtown and Ansonia have taken over corporate buildings. And even in the case of Ansonia, they took over the Farrell corporate headquarters by eminent domain. And they spent 1.8 million on eminent domain for that, which is not part of the 11.6. And so there's 3 corporate buildings, East Lyme, Ansonia, and Newtown being taken over. And you can see the relative project costs. Both Newtown and Ansonia are currently under construction. Those are their appropriated costs, which include soft costs as well as building costs, and doesn't include the acquisition costs. It doesn't include off-site costs like water main extensions or things like that. And probably more significantly in last week's news, Ansonia's building is going to spend that much money for 28,000 square feet of a police department, and they need another 3.1 million to finish and fit out the building. Otherwise, it would be a shell of a police department. So Ansonia is already up to $14 million, and they are going to be using the governor's executive orders avenue to provide that additional funding. Kind of the bottom line is with that 7.18 for East Lyme, including the property purchase, and almost as importantly, being 17 acres of property, we can't find another example currently in the police department nomenclature in Connecticut where there is a better value that you have found in the Honeywell building, and certainly in the value in the property and that additional floor space that you can choose to expand into. So we believe it represents a very sound value. And as I began at the beginning, the building systems are very good and sound and will serve the town for 40 to 50 years more. And certainly there are going to be preventative maintenance as well as regular maintenance needs. Like for instance, that roof system is dry right now. It's coming to the end of its useful life, but the end of its useful life in roofing systems are as variable as those that take care of them, so that you could spend a few $1,000s a year in just patching or repairing when a leak pops up 3 years from now. And we've seen 20-year roofs last 30 years based on their environment, their microclimate, trees, foot traffic, etc. Down at the very bottom is probably just a reminder that the clock is ticking. Noble Construction has an obligation to hold their bids for 120 days, and therefore, if Noble chooses to walk away on August 22, their good value bid will walk with them. Now, not all contractors necessarily give up a contract if they have hope that it's going to be approved in 30 days or 60. And especially in this climate, and you've seen it in the bid values, it was very good competition, and we know you got very good value. And with that, Mark, I am done.
Oh, okay. I know there's more screens to share. So let me try that. There we go. We'll go back to this and we'll go to slide maybe here.
Next one.
We did that one. Okay. Anna Johnson.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Anna.
Oh, you're going the wrong way, Mark.
Oh, how about that?
One more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The first slide we're going to look at is a graphic representation of what our debt service looks like and will look like. So the purple blue color at the very bottom is what our current debt looks like. The next color, which is I guess a blue, that represents what we have and will be taking on for the elementary school projects. And the yellow color is what we have and will be taking on, what we will be taking on for this subject building, the public public safety facility. And then the next color on top, the green, is for other capital improvement projects that we are looking at doing. Next slide, please. Okay, so I apologize for all of the numbers.
Oh,
This is a representation of what our principal payments look like. So the first column to the left represents what our existing general fund principal payments are, which are roughly $52.7 million. And then the next several columns represent what debt we will be taking on. So the first two columns, the first one is the public safety facility and other capital improvement debt. And then the next column is the school renovations project. So in August of this year, when we go to market, our plan is to bond $4.7 million, which includes the police station, $3 million for the police station, and then another 1.78 for other projects that we have done, and then 10 million on the school project. And then again, in August of 2021, we will bond an additional phase of the police building, which is about $2 million. And then the remaining portion of the elementary school projects, $8,045,000. And then the following August in 2022, we would bond, if the supplemental appropriation of $2.2 million is approved, that would get bonded in August of 2022. So as we've talked about in the past, when we look at doing projects and bonding, we try to be very mindful of what the debt service in our budget is going to look like. And we try to keep it as level as possible. And that's the reason that when we look at projects, we phase in the debt over time. Next slide, please. This is to talk a little bit about how we get to financing for projects. So back early in 2019, this project was identified and brought to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, which, they each approved the project. And then it went to referendum in February of that year. And then what we did in April of 2019 is we sold some temporary notes in order to make the purchase of the property, the building. And the closing for that property was held on May 3rd. And subsequent to that, when the initial notes that we took out matured, we rolled them over and added the remaining $2 million of the $5 million appropriation for short-term notes. And when they mature this August, we will permanently bond the $3 million of that $5 million, and then we would roll, the $2 million over and then add to it the $2.2 million if it passes at referendum. And then in August of 2021, we would bond an additional $2 million and then roll the $2.2 million in short-term financing over until August of 2022, at which time we would permanently bond that $2.2 million and the project would be all be permanently funded. Next slide, please. This slide looks at what our indebtedness is, and it just shows the principal. So it gives a 10-year lookout. So our beginning balance is approximately $52.7 million, but during the current fiscal year, we're paying off a little over $4 million with current outstanding obligations that we have. And then in 2021, we're going to be adding $14.7 million, and we're going to be paying off about $3.6 million. And then again, in 2022, we're looking at adding another $11.4 million and paying off $3.5 million. And then the final year that we add the public safety facility to our debt, we would be adding $3.8 million, and that year we would be paying off $3.5 million. So you see that when we add debt, we also, during the same year, pay off debt. And, we all knew that when the elementary school projects were approved, that we would be taking on a larger amount of debt than we typically do. Next slide, please. Okay, what this slide represents is showing what percent of our annual budget's debt service is to the total budget. So the years 2020 and 2021 are bolded because those are what our actual budget numbers are. The remaining years are estimated. And for purposes of this illustration, we used the average budget growth over the last 4 years, which is 2.215%. Now, this is a ratio that the rating agencies look at every year when we go to seek our credit rating. And what they key in on this particular ratio is keeping it under 8%. So as noted, even with these projects that we have that are approved, that we're looking to approve, we are keeping it under that 8% level. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what most residents, taxpayers are interested in. What is the impact of this project going to have on my taxes? So at the point in time when we take on all of the project debt, which is estimated at $7.2 million, if your home is assessed at $250,000, your the average tax increase would be about $49, $4.10 a month. If you have a home assessed at $350,000, the average tax increase would be just under $70 a year at $5.75 a month. And then if your home is assessed at $450,000, the average tax increase would be a little over $88, with the monthly charge being $7.38. Now, this is the average cost at the end of the 3 years that we plan on taking this debt on. So if you, when I kind of looked at all the numbers, it averages out to be roughly 1/3 of the tax increases that are noted in this illustration. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Well, Mark, if you can go to the next slide. Just wanted to recap a little bit of what's been presented by Bill, Brian, and Anna. And the project cost as presented at $7.18 million is a 19.7% increase over what the Board of Selectmen approved with the rough order of magnitude cost estimate last January. And that's 1.8 million more than the 6 million that was approved. This does include an elevator. An elevator is not required. As Brian stated, we can provide ADA access to the back of the building. The Vision Committee, for several reasons, chose not to only rely on that entrance for ADA accessibility. We didn't want members of the public, based on the future use of the second floor, to have to go through the police-controlled parking lot at the rear of the building. We felt that this was the right thing to do at this time. We didn't want to have to add an elevator in the future when the town does determine what functions will go on the second floor. If this $600,000, and the $600,000 is the $200,000 for the cab, which was a bid alt add, and also approximately $400,000 in steel construction roof work to put the shaft in. That's an approximate number. If that was not to be included in the project, that would reduce the increase from the $6 million that the board approved in January of 2019 to a 9.6% increase. But the Vision Committee unanimously agreed not only to put the shaft in, because at the beginning we thought we'd get a price, we'll get the shaft in there and we'll determine if we want to add the cab. We thought it was the right thing to do at this time for an extra $200,000 to put the cab in, which will make access to the second floor, whether it's for one office a few months after the project is completed, whether it's to store material up there in the interim. It would provide good access and also access to the IT room that's on the second floor as we bring that equipment in to outfit that room. So overall, the $7.18 million project is costing the town about $250 per square foot. That compares to approximately $400 a square foot for new construction, which yields the $12 million example that Brian presented a few slides ago. So $7.18 million total cost, when you compare it to $12 million, is 67% less. Excuse me, the $12 million is 67% more than the $7.18 million. So that is a significant amount of money, you know, at $4.8 million and more for new construction costs. That is a big ticket. Would it have yielded? Would it yield a new building? Yes. Would it yield a new building that may not need as much maintenance as this building will? That's a fact. But $4.8 million is a very large sum. And as I stated earlier, the Vision Committee unanimously, endorsed presenting this project, as you've seen tonight, at $7.1 million. There were lengthy discussions. Does the elevator go in, or doesn't it go in? Do we do sprinkler or fireproof walls? And not every one of those decisions was unanimous, but it was a majority that decided these are the things we wanted to include in the project. And the items that are included yielded this cost estimate of $7.18 million. Go to the next slide, Mark. So it's an overview of the value of the project as presented this evening. It's a fully functional public safety facility at an affordable cost. It provides for those who are dedicated to professionally and bravely protect the citizens of East Lyme 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It leaves 13,000, or as you stated earlier, 13,800 square feet of office space that is available, along with approximately 10 acres of remaining land for future town needs. That just adds to the value of this project. That's, as you can see by Bill's presentation of what other police departments in the state are doing. We're spending $7.18 million, and we have this amount of square footage and this amount of acreage available for future use by the town. The Vision Committee unanimously, as I've stated, thinks this is the best value proposition for the town and for the residents of East Lyme. And before I conclude, I do want to extend my thank you and the thank you of the entire Vision Committee to both Bill and Brian. Silver Petroselli and Associates did an outstanding job working with us, putting things in, taking things out as we debated and worked our way through to what we thought was the best value proposition for this project. So thank you both for bearing with us, helping us along the way, and bringing us to the point of making this unanimous recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. With that, that concludes our presentation, and we'll open the floor to questions from the Board of Selectmen. Thank you very much for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bill, Brian, Anna, and Ann Santoro, who's on the Vision Committee and did a great job of helping put the slides together. Thank you all for your presentation. I'll open it up for comments from the Board of Selectmen. Are there any comments?
Mark, this is Kevin Siri, a question for probably Anna. She showed on that slide, it's been shown what the cost is for the $7.2 million project. It'd be nice, it'd probably help the townspeople out if they could see what would the cost have been at 250, if you're assessed at 250,000 at 6 million, so they can actually see the difference in yearly cost for that. And also find a way to work in there. We are going to save roughly close to $50,000 a year by not having to pay Waterford to house our evidence and provide lockup and processing for prisoners. So show how some of that savings might translate as well too. I think that would help out some people. You know, what's the difference between 6 and 7.2 million for your yearly taxes?
Okay, I'll make a note,
Yeah,
Kevin.
maybe in the future for the public presentation. Are there questions on the presentation tonight? I have one. Comments from the public said we're going to have to replace the roof in 1 or 2 or 3 years and should be included. I remember the conversation much differently. Are we working on the roof in this project? Is there any patchwork necessary right now on that roof?
Yeah, this is Brian Cleveland.
Brian.
We did carry within our scope of work, which is included in the bids that we received, work on patching and repairing the existing roof.
Okay.
So that's included.
Yes.
Okay.
Will we be replacing this roof in 3 years?
No, patching and repairing generally can last 10 years or more.
Okay.
And just to be clear, Mark, on the roof, to support the elevator shaft, there will be a breakthrough through the roof, and that is part of is included in the estimate as well.
Right. So that, and then that gets resealed and re-taped up or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Mark, could I follow on that question? Could I also ask about the HVAC?
Yep.
The status of that. I know we're replacing one. We heard earlier that they may need to be going 1 to 3 years. Is that what you anticipate with the other 2 units?
So we had our engineers analyze all of the equipment throughout the building. We know that there are 2 large air handlers that supply the conditioned air. One serves half of the building, one serves the other half. They are of 2 separate ages, about 5 years apart from one another. So it was decided at this time to replace the oldest of the units. So the other unit, which is 5 years younger, is going to remain and should have at least that much life left in it.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And generally, do we replace those when they go, or do we replace them proactively?
As a town, we replace them when they go.
That's what I thought.
I mean,
But we've also built up, Mark, we've also built up that fund over the last several years where we have money in the cap and so when these things happen, we don't have to go for the whole amount. We've been doing that, I know, for several years, trying to put some money aside for large projects when they pop up.
we have these units all over town, on all the town buildings and facilities. School does as well. And believe me, we squeeze out every last drop of usefulness before we go and replace things like that. Other questions for the
So Mark, I have a few questions. So can you just, Brian, or could you go over just what we're doing with, you mentioned some lighting. Is there anything being done with the driveway? Just a little bit of what's going on with the outside work.
Yeah, so we did do an investigation of the driveway. It is in good shape. It's not great. It obviously has some cracking in it, but it is certainly serviceable for the foreseeable future. We are doing some small areas of repaving in order to grade them to allow for handicapped accessibility. We are also doing some sidewalk and curb work, which is going to require us to cut and patch some of the existing driveway around where that work is happening. But the driveway is in good shape, and it will continue to be serviceable.
Okay, great. Are the two items we heard that may need some work in the future, the roof and the AC units, is it those are the big items that you foresee in the next 10 years?
Yes, the big scope items are definitely those two pieces. The building otherwise is in very good shape. It's very structurally sound, and it will last for a very long time otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Some other questions. I'm not sure who's the best to answer this. Well, actually, Ann on the first one. Interest rates right now. Where do you see interest rates in the next year or two compared to what we had in the past? It seems right now the interest rates are low.
Okay, so, oh, did I unmute myself? Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So, looking at August of this year, for notes, probably 0.75%, and for bonds, probably 2.25% or so. And then like for 2021, we would add another 0.5% for notes and another percent for bonds. And then the following year would be another 1.5% for bonds. That's what we're estimating right now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That's a tough answer to come up with. I mean, God knows where this economy is going to go, and what the Fed will do to the rates. But
Right. But right now they're pretty low.
yes,
Was my point. The only other questions I have, we have a contingency plan. I don't know if that was mentioned, but I think there is well, can somebody explain? I think we have an 8% contingency or 300,000. Is that correct?
is it 10?
10% contingency at
Moved
300,000.
it up to 10%. We decided to buffer any issues and make sure we have enough money there should something come up. 10% contingency, which obviously will not be spent if the plan goes as planned.
So that's in the 7.18.
It's
No.
within
Correct.
Okay. So if we don't use all of it, then the total project cost can go down.
correct.
Okay. Two more questions. Are there any reimbursement opportunities for any of the items?
We looked into that. We looked in both for energy reimbursements. Weren't able, like we talked to the utility, gain anything there. We did apply for, or the town did apply for a grant from FEMA, hoping to offset the cost of the emergency generator. Unfortunately, at this time, that we didn't make the next round on that. So I don't believe there are no other reimbursement opportunities at this time that we've been able to identify or obtain.
Is there any from the Millstone funds? Sometimes they provide some funds for items. I think we get some every year.
We will be for the EOC portion during our Millstone grant each year. We will be putting small portions in, but that's just going to only for the EOC portion of the building.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have. So, and the timeline is if this gets approved, the work would start in August. That's the plan right now.
Yes. Yes.
Or-
The contract would start immediately.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
You know, are there any other questions from the committee, from the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
There you are. I got you, Roseanne. I realized that you may.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Right. I lost a little connectivity. Was the issue of the water brought up?
The water is addressed. There's a $40,000 allowance to connect to the public water supply, Roseanne. That's in the $7.18 million project cost.
Okay. All right. So do we know this, is that based on whether or not this new development goes in and they might be able to bear part of the cost, or is this if we have to pay the whole freight?
That cost is based on bringing it from their property to the building, the number of feet that piping would have to run.
Okay. Do we know the status of that proposed development?
That status is that they're coming in. They've already applied for building permits and they're in the final stages of approval. This has been an ongoing project for 5 years. It went through
Okay.
affordable housing project that went through an appeal process that the town lost.
Mm-hmm.
And yes,
Right.
it's built and it's already been approved by the courts.
Okay. All right. Secondly, on the elevator, want to make certain that the elevator is certainly obviously accommodating for passengers, but we also, with eventual use of the second floor, we also need to consider that it be able to carry some freight, be able to move things from one floor to the other.
That's correct.
And, okay. And then as I look at the plans, I've been assured that they will be able to access the second floor without going into the main part of the building at all.
Correct. They'll be able to access via a stairway from the first floor in the lobby, a
Mm-hmm.
stairway on the left side of the building, and then via ADA accessibility level entrance at the back of the building.
Right.
That's shown on the plan.
Okay, so now we're not planning on doing anything anything beyond what's on the chart, on the maps for the second floor. But I believe that we're going to want to very soon be able to utilize that second floor for some ideas that people have for possibly some compatible use and also to bring in some income. So for the second floor, with minor modifications such as putting up some petitions and things, would that second floor be usable?
That's correct. Whether we use an existing room and furnish an existing room, it will be accessible and usable depending on the functionality that goes into it.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody wanted to come in with a compatible use for the public safety building, and they were willing to pay for their own petitions and things, then that would be possible.
Right, depending on whatever leasing agreements the town would enter into.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'd like to hear any other comments, and then I would have some final statements to make.
About that upstairs, Roseanne, we've had some inquiries already about the use of incubator space. A lot of towns make available space for small businesses to maybe have outside of the home office. We're all getting used to that now, but also
Right.
for gathering and for different businesses working together in synergy. There's been talk about that. Some area for town committee use. Our space is very limited here in town hall, and we might be able to put on some town committee meetings over there that aren't typically televised, but also organizations in town that are looking for space that serve our population. And that all these people have been inquiring about some of that use. Putting the elevator in reduces the cost later on about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important. It's not part of the presentation, and this is a vision committee presentation, and they wouldn't necessarily be part of the conversation. It wasn't their charge, but we have this Dominion building sitting on our main street that part of the agreement is work together to develop that property once we vacate the building and create an economic driver. We think it'll be worth $500,000 in income to the town that would help reduce some of the debt. And that's important to remember. So not only would be getting $500,000 from the sale of the property, creating a tax base on that property, which would be greatly enhanced building, but also something that would be a cornerstone or a keystone on our Main Street, a featured building on Main Street that would be developed there. And there's been a lot of interest from developers. When will that be available? We're on the top of the list for the Brownfield grant project. That has been reintroduced to the legislature, but then of course the legislature vacated Hartford mid-March. But Brownfield money is something that's environmentally, obviously if it surrounds environmental issues, that money comes from the Fed, goes through DECD and DEEP, and is made available. And that money will be available. Our project is an A++ project for that. We anticipate getting funding for the exploration of the project and then the removal of any contaminants. I'm not going to say that right.
Well, I think that you're right. This is for a separate discussion, but I did feel that it was appropriate for the commission to kind of give us the information that the second floor would be able, with minor modifications, to be able to be used pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll wait and see if anybody else has any questions, and then I'd like to make a couple of statements.
I'll call back on you, Roseanne, if anybody else. Does anyone else have any questions in the Board of Selectmen? Anything else? Paul, you did an amazing job. I tell you at every meeting. I know it's kind of like what you do for a living, and this is small potatoes compared to, the big projects at General Dynamics that you were working on, which is just phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you for your service to the town. Thank you for steering, herding the cats of the Vision Committee. There are a lot of personalities, and a lot of people came from different perspectives, and you were able to bring everyone together in a general consensus. And in the end of the day, every member of the Vision Committee supported this. And I do appreciate the service of town. You've served us well. Thank you. And all the other members of the Vision Committee, far and wide, who are here tonight or might be listening in later. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll be back.
Dan,
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to make a couple of comments before we end.
Roseanne,
Yes,
Roseanne,
Yep.
we're going to have Dan speak first. Dan, Mr. Cunningham.
Yep. That's fine.
No, I just want to reiterate, I want to thank Paul for his leadership. It really, I don't think we would have gotten as far as we did, as quickly as we did, and efficiently without Paul, your help and your leadership. So thank you for that. I thought you did a great job having been at those meetings, and so good job.
Thank you, Dan.
The other thing is, as far as talking about the second floor, one of the reasons I think the consensus was, and I think everybody felt the same way, was that let's get the elevator with the cab in it, so that that second floor really does become an asset that different groups and the town can utilize down the road without having to spend a lot more money. It'll be ready to go. So it'll be a good thing to have the cab in there.
No doubt about it. Thank you. Thank you, Dan,
Yep,
for your
that's
comments. Kevin, you served on that committee. You've been through them all. Are you all set, Kevin?
I was going to say something, but unless Roseanne wants to go first.
No, go ahead, Kevin.
I'm just going to speak basically to having been involved, obviously, in law enforcement for 3 decades of my life, starting out here as a part-time officer in '85. I can honestly say, obviously, I'm not subjective in this. I remember getting hired as a part-timer in '85, late '85, and there was talk about a PD and going independent. Well, 32 years later, we went independent. 2 failed attempts at public safety complex for a variety of reasons. One's voted down by Board of Finance because they had some concerns about the location and the costs, and another time at referendum. There's no question the current building is just not safe and healthy for neither our officers or members of the public. We would never allow our educators or our or people that work in town hall or members of the public works to work in a facility like we're asking our officers to work. And we all know, we've all read the headlines, there have been some concerns over police policies over the last few weeks. But our officers for decades have worked hard and tirelessly to instill and get the trust and respect of the community. You look at people like Bruce Babcock, 35 plus years in town, a volunteer coach for football. Don Hull, school resource officer. Every student in school and middle school and above know who he is. Jim Lewandowski, in addition to being a police officer, has been a volunteer fire chief. Officer Favalori and his wife, they were so involved in the Miracle League, raising money for that and making that come to fruition. Our police officers, from the chief on down to the most junior officer, are invested in the community, and well over half of them live in town. And enough has been said about, the fact that town have to spend more money, and we probably should have looked a little harder and come up with a better cost, closer to where it is. But the thing is, we're getting a very good value. Just in the last 2.5 decades, we have seen additions to the high school, a pool, an artificial turf field, a new middle school, the renovation of the 3 elementary schools, a new public works facility, all very needed for these people who work so hard for the community. After 35 years, it's time to get our emergency services, police, obviously not the fire departments, but the fire marshal, dispatchers, and police centrally located where they can provide the best possible service for the town. So I am fully behind this, and hope that town can support it as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you for your service as well. Roseanne, I think that leaves you. This is not your first rodeo.
No, it isn't. I've been at this since 1984, and I have had the opportunity to visit many neighboring police stations, police facilities, including some that have been built at around the time that we were discussing the last proposal. I've been to Clinton, to Montville, several around the state, and I think that this is, for what we're working with, I think everybody has done a good job for the right reason. So we knew in 1984 that we didn't have adequate facilities. We went to the high school in 2000. The police went to the back burner. We tore down Haynes School and built a middle school. The police facility went to the second back burner. We paid to renovate the former junior high to be suitable for elementary schools. Now the police is shifted to the third burner. The Board of Ed knew and voted for 3 elementary schools, and that took the fourth burner. Most of our homes have 4-burner stoves. When the stove goes, it's to the microwave, the hot plate, or the crock pot. But that doesn't cut it for an agency that's 24 hours, 365 days a year that we all count on. They deserve an appropriate professional workspace for the professionals that they are. And we've all been fortunate to benefit from their services over the years. So the time has come to put this and make a 5th burner and put them on the stove. Let's do it.
5-burner stove. Thank you, Roseanne. I know just during my short period of time when I came into office, we were contemplating $86 million elementary school. And we were doing the elementary schools before the police because we had 2 failed police station attempts and the schools kept deteriorating. So we said, let's leapfrog these projects. We have to do the police, but let's get the schools out of the way. And part of the decision of bringing that $86 million down to the eventual $37 million and making a renovation plan is we knew we had a cost coming up in the future, this being the major one. We also had a cost to extend the library building. That is a real cost, a real need. This project handles both. This project handles both. Because when we leapfrog, we had no idea Honeywell was going to be available. We were just in our capital plan. holding on to $12 million to build a new building. We didn't know where, we didn't know what, but this opportunity comes up. All in, we're going to be $7.2 million. It's $1 million more than we anticipated 2.5 years ago when we started looking into the building, when we had a professional come in and take a snapshot of the building. I wish it was lower, but we're doing it right. We're doing it first class, not extravagant, not big amphitheaters and private kitchens and all that. We're because there were plans like that in the past. This is an appropriate building with full functionality for some of the most important workers in our town that have been not cared for multiple decades. Roseanne says 1984 they were talking about it. That's 30 something years ago, right? Almost 40 years ago. So,
Mark, can I have 2 final comments, please?
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank my fellow Vision Committee members who joined us tonight. I appreciate your support and throughout this entire progress. And my last comment is, you've heard testimony tonight about what is deserved and what is needed by those who serve us. And I encourage both this board, the Board of Finance, and the citizens of East Lyme to do what's right for the people who care and protect us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark, can I add one final comment too?
Yes, Mark.
So, first of all, I concur with what everyone said, and I want to thank everyone on the Vision Committee. Paul, man, we couldn't have had a perfect person to lead it. So thank you to you, Dan and Kevin and everyone else that was on it. I'll just echo what you said, Mark. Since I've been involved since 2000, the 2 main things we had to do, we just finished in middle school at that point, was to get the police station and the elementary schools. We just got the elementary schools done. Now it's time for the police. We've been waiting way too long. It's really time to move them and our essential services into a modern, new, functional building. Just having dispatch and the PD together is, I think, a huge, huge need right now. The biggest thing I'm taking away from tonight is 40 to 50 years. That's what we're being told. We're going to get 40 to 50 years out of this project. That's almost as good as building a new building, guaranteeing 40 to 50 years. So with the 7.18, 40 to 50 years, I think that's a really good value. I'm going to support it.
Thanks, Mark. The good news is we bought the building already, and the town overwhelmingly approved buying the Honeywell building and turning it into a police station. What's on the table tonight is really $1.2 million difference in the price. The estimated price, the Board of Finance reduced the 6 to 5 and then said, come back with details. We're coming back with full details. In fact, we already have a winning bid, and we have a contractor who's called me twice saying, can I start? We're ready to go. So, and we know the bottom line price. So really we're talking about the difference between what we knew would be a $6 million project, approved at $5 million. So there's a $2.2 million difference, but we knew that $1 million was in there. It is $1.2 million addition to do the building right, to put the elevator in, to put the water systems in, and to build this thing out right with the right schematics, the right flow in the building, and also creating that whole second floor for future space. That's the ultimate question. Because we can't have a town meeting due to the COVID restrictions, we have agreed with the Board of Finance members to go to a referendum, which is allowed. Frankly, if it was just $2.2 million, a town meeting may have sufficed, but so the town could have a voice, but where we can't have that, we've agreed to a referendum. So the way the order would be is, should you approve tonight with a motion to go forward with this, we would pass it along to the Board of Finance. In the meantime, we will have a special meeting, I believe the motion says, to craft the bond resolution with an approval. And now that we're at this stage, I think the motion is going to say, craft the bond resolution. We'll have a special meeting to approve that. In the meantime, the Board of Finance will be delivered the fact that we've approved this and moving it on. They will schedule either a special meeting or do it at their regular meeting in July, and we would anticipate a referendum thereafter.
I think it's, oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to make a motion, but go ahead.
I think it's very important that we continue to refer to it as the public safety building. So many people I talk to say, do we need all this space just for the police? So we want to make certain that every time we refer to this, it's the public safety building, not the police station.
Right. Okay. Agreed.
This is Kevin Siri. I will move to approve the Public Safety Building Vision Committee's recommendations as presented, and to direct the Finance Director to work with Bond Counsel to prepare the necessary documentation to move this matter for Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance approval, then to referendum for final adoption.
Mr. Cunningham, the honors, please.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Dan Cunningham seconds the motion. Mr. Siri made the motion. Are there any other comments? If not, if those who approve say aye.
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 Any oppose? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you. I noticed that I think Roseanne fell off again, and she'll want her vote counted. Maybe we'll give her a second to come on. This is very challenging sometimes, and sometimes you're going to be a little unorthodox when it comes to these meetings. So I apologize in advance. Roseanne, are you back? Very frustrating for Brian tonight. For Roseanne, she popped off a couple times. See, other people are missing. We'll go on to other items, and if Roseanne does come back on, we'll ask if she would want her vote counted for the record. I think that's important. We'll go on to ex officio reports. Kevin?
Yeah, just really quick. Parks and Rec met last week. They've decided, based on the governor's relaxation a little bit of things and opening up, to sell a limited amount of day vehicle passes to out-of-town residents, roughly about 20 per beach per day. Dave Putnam will be the one who decides how many, what the proper number is, but to at least open a little bit up to out-of-town residents for just drive-in day passes. That's it.
And that's a small percentage. It might be 10.
Very small. Roughly, he figures
keeps
it'll
us
be about
legal,
20%. Yeah.
but also allows the police to enforce trespassing issues should someone not, they crash the gate and jump on our beach and all that. There's some, it should cover us that way. Thank you, Kevin, on that. Roseanne, you jumped off again. Sorry for your difficulties.
Please record my vote as yes.
Thank you. We were holding the meeting a little bit, waiting for you to come back. We went to ex officio reports, and knowing that you'd want, I wanted to know how you voted. So thank you. We'll record that as yes. Andy, I'm sure has that. Dan, any ex officio reports tonight?
Yeah, I do. I have Wellsco. One of their problems, one of their concerns now is because of COVID-19, actually selling the shellfish permits. And that's an important source of their revenue every year, selling those permits. And some of the individuals that were working, so they sold a lot of them at Hilliard's Bait and Tackle, and some of the folks that work there are at risk for COVID and aren't there. So it's become an issue of how they're going to be sold. But they're trying to do a workaround so that people can have access to the permits and get out on the river as it's allowed. The other thing, financially, they had really maintained their own books and finances, Wellsco, And that became somewhat problematic liability-wise, I think for other reasons. So Waterford has agreed to kind of incorporate their finances into their accounting systems. So that solves the problem for Wellsco. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Mr. Daigle?
Nothing to report. I was unable to attend the Inland Wetlands meeting, and the Harbor Management Shellfish Committee has not met due to COVID.
Yeah, I'll just report that I've been working with the Inland Wetlands Committee. They've been struggling with, a protocol and public notification. They're trying to have a public meeting, and I think some communication got a little scrambled, and there was some, let's just say, friction between the staff and the commission. I think we've solved that. And I think we're working a little better together down there. We're just trying to serve the town and do what's right. They do have an aggressive agenda, if you will, or mission to increase the inland wetlands upland review area by 5-fold, which would just about cover every square inch of the town. They'll work through that. We're not telling them how to vote. We just are asking them to listen to the professionals in the business and how that might affect land values in the town, individual land values, residential land values, never mind commercial. So they'll work through that. That's upcoming, and I know when you have time, you'll jump back in there. Thank you, Mr. Daigle. You've done a lot of work. Mr. Salerno, did I call on you yet?
Nope. So real quick, library, they're waiting to hear back from the carpet price. I think they're all set with that. They're just waiting for the final price. They are having their annual meeting on July 13th. It'll be in person, but it'll be socially distant. They do plan on having some opening up the library starting July 6th. They're working out the final details now, but people will be able to go in, not hang out, but go in and get materials. And they'll be able to reserve computers if people need it. So I'm not going to go through all the details of that, but that is the library is starting to open up.
And that's July 6th, right?
The plan right now is July 6th. Yeah. Yep. So I'll keep you posted as I hear more. That's all I have right now.
Yeah, we're working through that. Thank you. And Mrs. Hardy,
Yes,
any
I'm back.
I know you are.
Just quickly, Commission on Aging. Ms. Wilson's done a great job of keeping the commission updated with emails or messages every 3 or 4 days. So they're well informed and up to speed. Meals on Wheels continue to be delivered every day, which is a great help for many people in the community. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, and I won't prolong the meeting. It's been long enough. It's been very, very well run, and Mr. Daigle and Vision Committee, again, thank you. We're working through in the town about the reopening. Of course, beaches are open. Some of the jungle gyms now are available for use. Moms and dads, bring your own Purell bottles. We don't have sanitizer. It's an outdoor facility, obviously, and they're not washed. So if you use at your own risk, but I think with kids touching everything these days, you bring the Purell of the hand sanitizer with you, and use accordingly. The ball fields are opening up. Some youth sports are happening now. That's a good sign. We hope to have concerts out on the band shell in August. We're working on maybe 5 or 6 weeks in August, Friday nights. The theater under the shell is looking to the end of July, possibly having a small run with a play, or I think it's a play, not a musical, out at the theater on the shell. So we're trying to bring some stuff back. We know we have to be careful. We know we can't rush into this. Very, very tough times. And, we're flipping on the TV and seeing things spike up in other areas of the country. And we want to do our best to make sure we adhere to the CDC recommendations and live smartly. We received 12,000 face masks the other day, surgical masks. The ones in the folds, these things here. I don't know if you can see it with my resolution. But 12,000, I'm going to distribute them to churches, to stores. The library will have some. We want to distribute them to the public. I'm going to go door to door down Main Street and up Flanders as well, and just deliver them to the stores. And if patrons come in, even if they have one, they might need one to bring home, or the one they have is getting old. We're going to be at this for a little while, so we have a supply that's covered by some of the COVID money we'll receive from the government. We ordered, I think, 12,500. So if anybody is watching this, needs this, selectmen, anybody else on the call that serve our town, if you know of a good idea, a good place to bring these, bring it. They come in boxes of 100. We can, of course, break that down and give you 1 or 2 or 5. But if you have an idea, please let me know. Send me an email. Give me a call. I'm in the office. We're open here at the town hall by appointment. So the town hall, you would come to the town hall and all the phone numbers are on the door, and you'd call that department, and if they could do the business with you through the Dropbox or coming out with a clipboard and just getting a signature, they'll do that. But if you need to come into the office for an inquiry, say at the assessor's office or the tax collector's office or my office, then you come in, you got to wear your face masks, and we've got to keep 6 feet apart. We have sneeze shields all over the counters, all over the town hall. And we are letting people in one at a time per office. We think July 1st or so, we're just going to unlock the door and let people in. We'll see how that goes. It will be tax payment season coming up. Tax bills will be going out. We put a message right on the front in red ink. Please make your payments by mail or online. We're trying to knock down, a lot of people like to make payments in person on their taxes. And we're asking people, given the situation, keeping our staff safe as possible, because that's important. These people are working for us, but also you interacting with other people in the building that might not have great ventilation. Please consider putting a stamp on it this year, and your check will be your receipt. That's what I have. The library's open the July 6th, and some of the other facilities in that building, July 6th, will be available, but probably not the senior center until we get closer to September. That seems to be the trend in Connecticut. All other functions are operational. I gotta say, we've done remarkably well as far as being COVID free as a we had 1 or 2 cases among our employees. They were, and some of our friends, commission members, but in town were affected, but nothing serious, and we were back to work after a short spell. So, there is a memorial service, I believe, coming up Monday at the Brydebrook facility for all those that had passed. If any of the selectmen are interested, I can get you the information if you'd like to join me. I believe it's 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon over at Brydebrook facility. I don't know any of the details, but they lost a lot of souls over there, and I lost a lot of people, a lot of friends, and I think they want to do a group service over there. That's coming up. There's a shred day coming up. I think it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. Do you know the times, Dan?
I believe it's 4 to 7.
Yeah, it's later in the afternoon.
I live those shred days, Mark. So I really stay on top of that sort of thing.
You're a big shredder, aren't you?
I am. I want to get everything out of it.
Terrific. So it's shred days tomorrow. It's over at the senior center area, right? I think it is. That's where we usually.
That's correct, Mark.
Yeah.
At
So
4 to
we're gonna
7
be
p.m.
there, and it's going to be wonderful. So if anybody has any important documents, for free, you can have things shred Thursday.
And they suggest a donation or something to help out Karen Scher. Is that right? Yeah.
Of course. We're always looking for those donations.
That's a great thing to do. And I just have a quick public service.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking out the window, and there seems to be a break in the line at Dairy Queen. So if anybody's close by, it's easy opportunity.
Do you want to meet there? Because I could probably
I'll
beat
just
you
be
there.
there. Yeah, I might just see you over there.
You remember the freshman 15 in college? I get the COVID 15. I'm
Yeah,
trying to work
baby.
it down. Dairy Queen is off my list right now.
Well,
We're at the end of our night, and it is almost my bedtime. So why don't we take a motion to adjourn? If there's not, oh, do we?
Why we have public comment?
We have public comment. Is there
Thank you,
anybody from
Mark.
the public? Oh, I see Fred clapping. Does that mean he wants us to leave, or does he have a question? Does anybody have any comments to the Board of Selectmen this evening?
Yes, I would like to make a comment.
Dan Price,
All right.
Chair. Chair of the Police Commission.
Yes, as chairman of the Police Commission, I would like to thank the board for moving this forward. This has been a work of so much time, so many people. I want to thank Paul for all his effort as chairman of the Vision Committee. I want to thank Julie Wilson because, oh my God, this would not have happened without her. She really bore the brunt of everything, of keeping minutes straight and keeping everything on track. But in all seriousness, our police department needs this building. This is a great deal for the town. It's a great deal for the police department. We're adding some stuff on there. Yes, we're a little over budget, but we're adding an elevator shaft. We're adding some other things on that we didn't necessarily need, but will benefit the town. It's a great deal for the town, and it's time. It is time to do this. And I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for moving this forward to the Board of Finance. And for the Police Commission, I just want to say thank you because it's time to do this and we need this building.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Won't it be a great day when we don't have to talk about this problem anymore? Won't that be a
Right?
When we cut the ribbon.
Exactly.
don't have to talk about this issue that we put off for decades.
30 years this has been going on.
Yeah. And spread the positive word and the importance of this with all the negativity out there. Any other?
So for the Police Commission, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for your service on the Police Commission. You've done a great job over there and on that new freshman rookie commission in town, the newest on the block. Any other comments from the public?
Motion to adjourn.
second.
As Kevin Siri, motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. Listen,
Aye.
stay safe, but stay sane. People are crazy out there. Just be careful, be safe and sane, and we'll get through this. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Have a good night.